We're in part 3 of our series on the book of Ruth in the Old Testament. And I want to review. If you know me, you know I like to review. But also, we are right in the middle of a story. And so we have to review a little bit to see where we've been the past couple of weeks. In chapter 1 of the book of Ruth, we were introduced to the family of a man named Elimelech. Elimelech, during a famine, decided to take his family and leave the land of Israel and head to the land of Moab. Now, while his family is in Moab, he passes away. He dies and leaves his wife, Naomi, a widow in a foreign land, and that's a big deal, especially back in that day. Now, Naomi allows her sons, she's got 2 boys, she allows them to marry Moabite women while they're there. But then both of Naomi's sons die. They pass away. And that leaves Naomi with just 2 Moabite daughters-in-law, childless daughters-in-law. And so Naomi decides to head back home to Bethlehem. She tries to convince the daughters-in-law to stay in the land of Moab because it's best for them to stay in their homeland. Well, Orpah, the one daughter-in-law, she decides to stay. But Ruth, she shows fierce loyalty, commitment to Naomi. In fact, she says these very famous words to Naomi, and I want us to read these words together. Will you read it with me? But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." What Ruth demonstrates here is what? Does anybody remember the Hebrew word? Hesed. Hesed, that's the Hebrew word, and we've talked about that over the past couple of weeks because that's a really big deal. That's a theme throughout the book of Ruth. And this Hebrew word hesed is such a big word. It's a rich word, and it's translated in various ways throughout the Bible because it just there's so much to it. Hesed is mercy, it's kindness, it's grace, it's goodness, compassion, steadfast love, loving kindness, faithfulness, loyal love. It's all of these things wrapped up in one. Hesed is an intense emotion. An intense emotion that results in action towards someone in desperate need. And once again, this is seen throughout the book of Ruth, as we'll continue to notice today. But by the time Naomi and Ruth return to Bethlehem, Naomi is feeling empty. She's feeling bitter because she's lost her home. They've lost the property, the land that they once owned. She's lost her husband. She's lost both of her sons. And so she and Ruth, 2 widows, are in a pretty desperate and hopeless situation. Chapter 2 begins when Ruth decides to glean in the fields. Now, what is gleaning? We talked about this last week. Gleaning refers to the practice in Israel of allowing the poor, the widows, the orphans, the foreigners to gather leftover crops of grain from the fields. And this was a way for the people of Israel to take care of the marginalized in their society. And it reflects the character of God. It reflects the heart of God towards the least of these. So through God's sovereign plan, Ruth just so happens to find herself gleaning in the fields of Boaz, a man named Boaz, an Israelite man. And Boaz just so happens to be a close relative or a guardian redeemer or a kinsman redeemer to the family of Elimelech. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. God was showing his hesed, his compassion, his kindness. God's sovereignty. In God's sovereignty, he was showing his hesed, his compassion, his kindness through the actions of Boaz. Boaz's kindness and compassion and grace and mercy. Boaz actually goes above and beyond to care for Ruth and Naomi. So the chapter ends with the conclusion of the barley and the wheat harvests. And so several weeks have passed. And Naomi and Ruth have food, but they have no land, no home, no security, no hope for the future. Will Ruth just continue to glean, for the rest of her life for food? So their immediate needs have been met. But what about their futures? That's what we're left asking at the end of chapter 2. And we're going to pick up where we left off in the story last week. But before we do that, I just want to take some time now to spend in prayer. Will you bow your heads with me? And I'm gonna lead you through this prayer time together. And I want to ask you this question as we spend some time reflecting and praying. Who do you relate to most in this story so far? Who do you relate to the most? Can you relate to Naomi? Maybe you've experienced loss. And maybe like Naomi, things just keep piling up for you. Maybe you're feeling empty. Maybe you're feeling bitter. Maybe you're going through something very difficult right now. Will you lean in God's direction? Will you embrace Him? Will you cling to Him? Will you call to Him in your time of need? Do that right now. Maybe like Ruth, you've received God's provision in a very specific way during a time of need in your life, and you feel grateful. You're thankful for that. Will you spend some moments right now thanking God? Maybe you've experienced God's blessing through the hesed of someone else. Maybe during the service you can take out your phone and send them a text. Let them know you're praying for them. Let them know you're thankful for them. Maybe you can make a phone call this afternoon, thanking them. Maybe like Boaz, you've been able to participate in the plans and purposes of God by being a blessing to someone in need. Will you praise God for that? What an incredible opportunity to participate in what God is up to in the world. Maybe you know someone like Naomi and Ruth. Will you pray for them right now? Ask God to show you what you can do to take action. How can you show hesed to them? Or maybe right now you're just unsettled. Maybe you're not experiencing any specific need, but you're just wondering, what's next for me? What's my future hold? Once again, just spend some time in prayer, cry out to God, thank God, lift people up to God, lean in God's direction. Just spend some moments in prayer right now, and then we'll continue to sing together and worship. So we're in chapter 3 of the book of Ruth, so open up your Bibles, or open up your Bible app, or just follow along. And I believe Sam and Jonah are going to come and help read the chapter for us.
One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you, where you will be well provided for. Now Boaz, with whose woman you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he is finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do." "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family."
Thanks, Jonah.
"The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there's another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him do his duty, or let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning." So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. And he said, "No one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor." He also said, "Bring me the shawl you were wearing and hold it out." When she did so, he poured into it 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "How did it go, my daughter?" Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her, and added, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Then Naomi said, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today."
All right, thank you. All right, so let's talk about this. So several weeks have passed, and Ruth has been gleaning in the fields of Boaz, who we've discovered is a guardian redeemer. He's a kinsman redeemer for Elimelech's family. So what's this all about? We talked a little bit about it last week, but what's this guardian redeemer, this kinsman redeemer? Well, redeem, as probably a lot of you know, redeem means to buy back, to recover, to rescue, to restore. So a kinsman redeemer was a close relative who had the responsibility to step in when one of their relatives experienced hardship in one way or another. So it was their responsibility as a guardian redeemer to provide for them, to meet for their needs in various ways, to rescue and to restore what was lost to them, to buy back family members who may have been sold into slavery to pay off a debt, to buy back property that was lost due to poverty. In some cases, it was their responsibility to marry the widow, to have children in place of the deceased relative in order to restore the family line. And there are other responsibilities of the guardian redeemer. If you can read all about these responsibilities in Leviticus chapter 25, verses 25 through 55. So while Boaz has been generous to Ruth and allowed her to glean in his fields, as we mentioned earlier, there's still a problem for Ruth and Naomi. They have food to eat. Their immediate needs are met, but they have no home. They have no land, no security. They have no hope for the future. Remember, they're widows. And so their kinsman redeemer hasn't taken action yet. In other words, Boaz isn't making any moves here. And so Naomi takes action on Ruth's behalf. Now, I don't know if you noticed when we read, but it seems that Naomi, that her concern, it seems to be solely for Ruth. Let me read the first verse again. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for." Her concern is for Ruth. This word translated home, I need to find a home for you. It's also translated as rest. Rest. So Naomi is seeking a home for Ruth. More than that, she's seeking security, provision. She's seeking rest for Ruth. So it seems that Naomi's spirits are lifting a little bit. Naomi has gone from being self-absorbed because of her loss, declaring herself to be bitter and empty, to now showing concern and looking out for Ruth's future, just as Ruth was looking out for her. Now let's think back to all that Ruth had lost. Think about this. Ruth had given up when she left her homeland and declared her loyalty to Naomi. She left her home, she left her land. What she thought was her hopes and dreams of remarrying, her hopes of a secure future. She left all of that behind when she embraced Naomi and Naomi's God. It showed her mother-in-law hesed, sacrificial, loyal love, by sticking with her, caring for her, providing for her. And now here's Naomi showing hesed to Ruth in return. And once again, we have to keep in mind the setting. This is during a time when there was no king, when the judges ruled. It was a time in Israel where covenant faithfulness and loyalty and compassion and kindness was scarce. Most people were just looking out for number one, doing their own thing, whatever they saw fit. In the midst of all that, a little bit of a hesed goes a long way. The hesed of Ruth and Boaz has rubbed off on Naomi, and Naomi goes from being hopeless to hopeful. She goes from receiving the hesed of Ruth to returning the hesed of Ruth. And now here's Naomi's plan. And this is a pretty risky plan. She gives Ruth these instructions. She tells her to take a bath, put on perfume, dress nicely. In other words, what she's telling Ruth, she's instructing Ruth to stop dressing as a grieving widow, to dress in such a way to show that she's now available for marriage. And by the way, this may have been one of the reasons why Boaz hadn't taken action yet, because Ruth was still dressing as if she was still in mourning. So Naomi then tells Ruth to go to the threshing floor where Boaz is spending the night. He's probably spending the night there so he can guard his grain from thieves that may try to break in at night and steal. Go to the threshing floor, scope out where Boaz lies down to sleep, and then when he falls asleep, go and uncover his feet or uncover his legs. And then lie down and wait, watch, and see what happens. And so Ruth agrees to all that Naomi instructs her to do. Now, some interpret these actions here to be sexual in nature. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it. The woman freshens up and goes to the place where a man's sleeping and pulls back the covers and lays down. It almost sounds like a soap opera or something. But we have to keep something in mind. We have to keep a couple things in mind. First of all, the author of the book of Ruth characterizes Ruth and Boaz as being people of honor, people of integrity, people of hesed, demonstrating sacrificial love and loyalty throughout the story. Maybe you'll remember from last week in the previous chapter, Boaz was described as a man of standing, a man of character, a man of honor, someone who was looking out for Ruth's best interests. And then later in this chapter, Boaz blesses Ruth for her actions and describes her as a woman of noble character. So in this story, neither Ruth nor Boaz takes advantage of the other. They are both acting for the good of the other. They are looking out for the best interests of each other. And that's rare. That's rare in relationships. Another thing to keep in mind is that this was a completely different time and place and culture as ours, right? We have to remember that. There are things that we're just not going to understand, we're not going to get. And this is really strange, right? When you read it, it's strange. We're not going to quite get it. But the uncovering of the legs was apparently a cultural practice back then. It was a way to get someone's attention. It was a way to elicit a response from someone, and possibly even a customary way of proposing marriage to someone in that day. So, like I said, this was definitely a risky plan. And Boaz, think of all that could have happened. Boaz could have interpreted Ruth's actions wrongly, taken advantage of her. He could have gotten her in trouble. He could have ruined her reputation. I mean, think about this. She's a woman proposing to a man back in that day. She's a young woman proposing to an older man. She's a poor gleaner, a servant, proposing to a wealthy landowner. She's a Moabite, a foreigner, proposing to an Israelite. What could go wrong? When Boaz wakes up, probably because his legs are cold, Ruth says, verse 9, Ruth says, I am your servant. I'm your servant Ruth. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family. You're a guardian redeemer of our family. Spread the corner of your garment over me. The corner of your garment is one word in the Hebrew language. And it's the same word that was used, it's the same word that was translated in the previous chapter as wings or feathers. If you were here last week, you'll remember that. In fact, let's turn there. Chapter 2, verse 12. Boaz says, may the Lord repay you for what you've done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. This was Boaz's prayer for Ruth, that she would find refuge under the wings of Yahweh, the God of Israel. And she did. She found that protection. She found that refuge in the fields of Boaz for the duration of the harvest. But now Ruth is asking for Boaz to be that refuge for her once again, but this time once and for all, for her future. The spreading of the corner of your garment was a symbolic act back in that day to indicate marriage. So Ruth is asking Boaz, will you cover me with your feathers? Will you spread your wings around me? Will cover me with the garment, the hem of your robe? Will you take me in? Will you care for me? Will you protect me? Will you provide for me? In other words, will you marry me? And spoiler alert for next week, Boaz becomes the answer to his own prayer for Ruth. That Ruth would find refuge under the wings of Yahweh. She does. Instead of taking advantage of Ruth, insulting her, shooing her away, I mean, she's just this young, poor Moabite woman, he says to Ruth, verse 10, the Lord bless you, my daughter. And once again, he's going to become the answer to his prayer here. The Lord's blessing. May the Lord bless you. This kindness, this hesed, there's the word again, this hesed is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. He had noticed Ruth's hesed earlier, her compassion, her kindness towards Naomi, in sticking with Naomi, caring for her during her desperate need. But he now says that this act of hesed, what Ruth has done here, is greater than that. Now why? Why would what she's doing here be greater than that? Well, he says here that she's chosen to pursue him and not some of the younger men. So maybe he's just a bit flattered. But more than that, he recognizes, once again, that Ruth is a woman of tremendous hesed. She could have pursued marriage to anyone, and her future would have been secure. She didn't have to do what Naomi was telling her to do. That was risky. She didn't have to do that at all. She could have pursued a different route for her own sake. But by pursuing marriage to Boaz specifically, Naomi's guardian redeemer, she's looking out for Naomi's future as well. As their guardian, their kinsman redeemer, if he redeems Ruth, then he'll need to redeem Naomi as well. He'll need to become Naomi's refuge as well. He'll need to redeem Naomi's property, buy back her property. He'll need to restore the family line of Elimelech as well. And so at the beginning of the chapter, we saw Naomi's intentions for Ruth, looking out for her, caring for Ruth's future. Now Ruth is doing the same for Naomi. Once again, in a time where faithfulness, loyalty, compassion, kindness is scarce. When most people are looking out for number one, a little bit of hesed goes a long way. Verse 11, Boaz says, "And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask." I will do for you all that you ask. Let's remember where Ruth came from. Let's remember that Ruth is a foreigner, that Ruth is a Moabite, that she's the poor servant gleaning in his fields. She's arrived in Bethlehem with nothing, and she has no hope. And now Boaz says he's going to do all that she asks of him. What a turn of events here. God has been at work in tremendous ways. In the morning, Boaz gives Ruth a bunch of barley to take back home to Naomi. And this is a gift, of course, but it's probably more than that. You see, if people see her leaving the threshing floor, the place where Boaz has been sleeping for the night, then, the rumors are going to fly. And things are not going to go well for a foreigner that's suspected of being a prostitute. But if she's carrying an armload of barley, then she must be working. So Boaz is trying to protect Ruth's reputation as well. Before the chapter ends, we discover there's a big problem. Boaz is a guardian redeemer, but he's not the guardian redeemer. Boaz reveals to Ruth that there's an even closer relative who has to be given the opportunity to redeem them if he wants. So the chapter ends with Naomi's words. Then Naomi said, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today." Ruth is left hanging to find out what happens. And we are as well. To be continued. But as we think about the takeaways here for us today, I don't know about you, but the book of Ruth is just such a breath of fresh air, especially when you see it in the context. It's right after the book of Judges, and like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, the book of Judges is just a horrendous. There's just horrendous story after story, violent stories, and we have to see the characters in the story of Ruth in contrast to the people of Israel during that time. That was a time when everyone did as they saw fit, when everyone was just looking out for number one, when everyone was doing whatever was best for themselves. There's some light now in the midst of the darkness. There's some hesed in the midst of all the injustice. And a little bit of hesed goes a long way. We're told in the very beginning, Genesis chapter 1, that human beings were created to be the bearers of God's image. And we talk about this all the time because it's really important. We were created to be the bearers of God's image. How incredible is that? Created to be representatives of God, to be reflections of His character in the world, reflections of His hesed to the world. But most of us know the story. Humanity has chosen to represent self instead, to look out for number one, to live as we see fit instead of how God created us to live. And so that image of God was lost. It was distorted. And that's what it means that every human being has fallen short of the glory of God. And that's why Jesus came. Jesus as the perfect image bearer, the perfect image of God, and Jesus as the ultimate guardian, redeemer of humankind. He came to buy back, to recover, to rescue, to restore what was lost. That image of God within humanity. And through an ultimate act of hesed upon the cross, He freely laid down His life, and then He rose back to life again, defeating that sin that has distorted His image within us, defeating the way of death that keeps us falling short time and time and time again. And so now, here's the opportunity. Following in the footsteps of Jesus, following in His footsteps, dying to self, raised to a new way of life, we are reborn. We're reformed, and we're being conformed daily to the likeness, to the image of Jesus. And so as we follow Jesus, we're now able to live the life we were created to live. We can now bear God's image, be reflections of His glory, His character, His hesed in the world. That's the opportunity we have. And here's what that looks like. Here's a little glimpse of what that looks like. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. In a world where everyone seems to do whatever they see fit, where everyone seems to be looking out for number one, integrity matters, character matters, humility matters. Looking out for the interests of others, for the well-being of others matters. Acts of hesed matter greatly. Not being right all the time, not having the right doctrine, not winning all the arguments in the culture war, not being powerful, not being on top, not being in control. It's our acts of hesed that will rub off on others and make a difference. Because a little bit of hesed goes a long way.